Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Sejanus' fall, and we get to hear from Macro today in Act 5, Scene 6. Now, that means that Act 5, Scene 5 has no monologues in it, and it's just a little smidge longer than the last one that we found that had no monologues in it. But all the same, we had Sejanus in Act 5, Scene 4, doing his sacrifice to the goddess Fortune, but the statue turned her back on him, and then we found out that when they put a new head back on Sejanus' statue that was in Pompey's theater, somebody then put a noose around its neck, and then there was a meteor in the sky, so Sejanus was like, all right, maybe some of these things are omens, but at the end of the scene, he convinced himself that he has done enough, that he's a good enough person, he's done enough stuff, he's defeated enough enemies, that really he should be okay. So meanwhile, we also had Macro sending around letters to get all of the Senate together for some sort of meeting that we don't have a lot of detail about yet. So Act 5, Scene 5 is fairly short. It's not as short as the other one that had no monologues, but still. And in this one, all of the people that Sejanus had sent letters to at the end of 5-4 have met up together. So we have Terentius and Minucius and Cotta and Latarius and Laco, and they're all like, we all basically got the same letter, like what is all of this? And then Sejanus comes in and he greets all of them, and they let him know that the entire Senate is going to be meeting together at midnight. And he's like, why they're calling a meeting without me? The Senate is meeting without me? How is this happening? But before he can get super annoyed with it, Satrius comes in and says that Macro is right outside and wants to talk to him privately. And he's like, well, okay, I'll meet with him, but maybe we should do it in here. And they're like, no, it's fine if you go in the other room. And he's like, all right, but Satrius, I want you to be in the room also, and like maybe just hiding so that you can be on guard for this conversation just in case things go weird. So Sejanus leaves the room with Satrius so that they can go and chat with / eavesdrop on Macro, and the other ones are like, oh, that's Sejanus, he's turned into such a nice man, and he's turned into such a great leader, and he can have all of my lives, I will follow him to the end of the earth. And that's the end of the scene. So we've got that, just a little bit of like a filler scene in between some other stuff. So Act 5, Scene 6, we're in the other room now in Sejanus' house, and Sejanus and Satrius are there, and Macro comes in, and Sejanus dismisses Satrius pretty quickly. It's just like, oh, hello, Macro, what are you here for? And he's like, well, I wanted to talk to you about some stuff. And they're like, okay, Satrius, yeah, you're dismissed. And Macro says that he has a message for Sejanus from Tiberius, the emperor, and Sejanus is like, oh, how is our emperor doing? And Macro says, right plentifully well, as with a prince that still holds out the great proportion of his large favors, where his judgment hath made once divine election, like the god that wants not, nor is wearied to bestow where merit meets his bounty, as it doth in you, already the most happy, and ere the sun shall climb the south, most high Sejanus. Let not my lord be amused, for to this end was I by Caesar sent for to the isle, with special caution to conceal my journey, and thence had my dispatch as privately again to Rome, charged to come here by night, and only to the consuls make narration of his great purpose, that the benefit might come more full and striking by how much it was less looked for or aspired by you, or least informed to the common thought. So what he's saying here is Tiberius is doing great, as well as anybody can be that has bestowed all of his favors primarily on one person. And hey, that one person happens to be you, Sejanus, and you're doing pretty good. And it's because you are so high up in his esteem that he privately called me out to Capri to meet with him, and then has privately sent me back because there's some news that I need to give to the consul that concerns you. And he thought that it would be better if this wasn't like super publicly announced first. It's news that should be shared sort of privately first. And Sejanus is like, news about me? If it's bad news, like, let me know right away. And Macro is gonna let him know what the news is in tomorrow's monologue. So I'll have some more comments on the content of this particular monologue. I do think it's interesting because we as the audience know that Macro is setting up this meeting and has been sort of conspiring with the non-Sejanus faction. And we also know that Macro just in general wants to take Sejanus down. He admitted that a couple scenes ago. So interesting here that he's like buttering up Sejanus and sort of taunting him with, there's some news coming that concerns you. I mean, what do you think this news is going to be? And is this news going to be the same when he tells the consul as when he tells Sejanus? So some interesting stuff coming up, and I will see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.